Welcome to today's webcast on harnessing the power of API data. My name is Manoj Gunti, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Apigee API Management Platform at Google. Also joining us today is Adam Brancato from Citrix, a company that has been a long-time customer of Apigee, and I will let Adam introduce himself in his own words.
Hey everyone, my name is Adam Brancato. I am the Senior Manager of Customer Apps over here at Citrix. Basically, our team is responsible for a section of our web apps that deal with customer contacts, profiles, single sign-on, authentication, authorization, everything around individuals and their company.
Thanks, Adam, for joining us today. So before we begin the webcast, I wanted to quickly cover a few housekeeping items. What you see on your slide should resemble your webinar console. On the bottom left, there is a Q&A console where you can post the questions at any time during this webinar. Once again, a quick reminder, you don't have to wait until the end of the webcast to post your questions. Feel free to post them at any time during this webinar. Next to the Q&A console, you will also see a resources console. We will be making references to a lot of resources during this webcast, and all the links to either download or visit the pages should be available in the resources console on your next to the Q&A console. So we will begin this webcast by talking a little bit about the evolution of API programs, how they have transformed from being agents of access to actually being agents of digital transformation. We will see how that evolution has impacted or created more pressures on certain stakeholders within the organization, and how API data can actually be leveraged to address some of those pain points of these stakeholders. And then I will pass it on to Adam, and he will walk us through the API journey of Citrix. He will talk a little bit about some of the use cases that they are trying to solve with APIs. He will also talk a little bit about why they chose Apigee and how has been their experience working with us. And then we will come to the most interesting topic of this webinar, where Adam will actually be demoing the real-time dashboards and the instances of Citrix. And then when we come back, we will talk a little bit about what are the different ways in which API data can be leveraged within an organization and what other problems can be solved. So I thought, to explain or to talk a little bit about the evolution of APIs, instead of me going through some slides, the best way to showcase that is to actually give you, show you a quick video of one of our customers, AccuWeather, who also has been partnering with Apigee for a very long time. So let's take a look at what AccuWeather is doing with the APIs.
I became fascinated with the weather when I was 3 years old, when I fell in love with snow. And by the time I was 7, I knew I wanted to be a weather forecaster. So AccuWeather, I started in college as a second-year graduate student. And AccuWeather is now the largest source of weather forecasts and warnings in the world. We've achieved this by having the greatest accuracy.
So AccuWeather was founded 56 years ago, really on pen and paper. Serving business customers. Over the last 10 to 15 years, it's really morphed into a digital solution, and APIs basically power that entire transformation.
The API is a way of feeding the best weather information into other apps and integrating easily however they want to use it.
We've been using Apigee for our API developer portal for over 18 months, and since day one, when we literally started with 0 developers, we've now branched out to over 50,000 developers out there in the community. A lot of people don't realize how many products and services are out there in the marketplace using AccuWeather APIs to power that back end. We serve nearly 50 billion API requests per day.
Apigee made it very simple for us to set up self-sign-up for potential clients. It gives us the ability to monetize our API and also to offer free APIs to people so they can try it out.
By having access to analytics, we're able to really get real-time information for what our developers are doing, what they like, what they don't like. It allows us to make that quick judgment to what we want to do moving forward in the future, as well as helping our developers get better experiences out of our APIs.
The weather forecast is more important than it's ever been. The weather can cause a flight to be canceled, rain out a baseball game. It interacts with everything. There are millions of developers and potential users around the world for this API. They can take our data and our forecast, integrate it into whatever they're doing, and make it better.
So this is very interesting, isn't it? So in the whole video, you have not seen anywhere mentions about access, about integration, and all this stuff. So what we are talking today is about creating experiences for customers, creating digital transactions, and actually enabling digital transformation through APIs. And we are not seeing this trend just with AccuWeather or some of the other customers, but in everyday, day-to-day conversations that we are having with our customers, we are seeing that the topics of API management have evolved beyond just access and integration. Like enterprises today are exposing their core business assets. And if you take the example of AccuWeather, their core business asset is the weather data. And they are exposing them to a fleet of developers and also several businesses that are actually using this weather data through APIs, embedding them into their business applications as well as consumer applications, right? And AccuWeather is actually monetizing those APIs. So it is essentially triggered a new business channel for the enterprise, leading to unlocking newer markets as well as additional revenue streams for the organization. So that is how APIs have evolved over the last few years. And when you think of APIs actually transforming businesses, what we also see is several customers or several prospective customers are actually still thinking of APIs as just a gateway. But when you are doing business critical stuff, I think it is very, very important to start thinking of APIs as not just one-off projects, but to actually think of them as business applications, right? Because you're not just providing access within your business systems internally, but you are now actually reaching out to your customers through API. And these products, when you're treating them as a business application, need to have a full life cycle management to be incorporated, but not just a simple gateway. And because the fact that a simple gateway cannot give you all the security levels, it cannot give you all the monitoring capabilities, and most importantly, it will not give you the capability to make it easily consumable for a wide range of developers. So what does a full lifecycle API management platform entail? So it starts all the way from the ability to create a proxy, design, test, all the way until publishing it, making sure that it is secure, making sure that the right people have the right access to the right APIs, and also at the same time to do a lot of analytics in the back end to analyze essentially how are developers consuming the APIs, and are the APIs available, up and running, and how do I protect them against abuse from bot and internal and external, right? So what the evolution of APIs and treating APIs as a product means is that now it is not just an API developer who is involved in the whole program. So a wide range of stakeholders now get involved into this whole program, all the way from a product or a program manager to a security or IT ops person to the line of business. If I were the product or program manager of a large API program, then I am very much interested in understanding which APIs are my developers using, what are the most popular API patterns, how do I increase the overall developer engagement, and for sure I will have to report the success of my program to my senior management on how do I very quickly and easily do that. And from an IT operations and security perspective, what happens is if your mission critical or business critical applications are powered through APIs. Let's take an example of a retail scenario where your promotions or your payments or your product catalog availability, reviews, everything is powered by a different API. And imagine you are in a Black Friday and Cyber Monday situation, and even a slight performance delay of an API could lead to significant loss in your revenue, right? How do I, as an operations person, make sure that my APIs are always available, they are always performing as expected, and at the same time, if something goes wrong, how do I quickly diagnose the root cause of this API and bring it back to life as soon as possible? And from a security and audit log perspective, how do I make sure that all the developers that are building these amazing APIs adhere to the security policies of my organization as well as my industry? And of course, you will not be able to scale up any of your API programs without the buy-in and investment from the line of business. And if I were the VP of IT, the CIO, CTO, or even the CFO, some of my biggest concerns would be, what is the ROI of the API program that I have invested in? How do I measure it? Where should I invest more, and which API programs should I actually retire? And what is the business impact or the consumer impact of this whole investment that I'm making, right? Am I able to reach out to newer markets? Can I unlock new revenue streams? Or what else can I do with this? So what is happening on the other side is, as you build and scale your API programs, there is you actually start to touch each and every person in the API lifecycle. What we call an API lifecycle is all the way from the backend system that you're exposing to the API teams that are building APIs, and the developer that is using those APIs to build amazing apps, and the consumer who is actually using the app and indirectly using the APIs that are behind it. So across all these touch points, as you build and scale the programs, there is a lot of data that is being collected on the platform. And this is one of the other big advantage that you get when compared to an API gateway, right? An API management platform is essentially able to collect all this data and able to provide you with the right insights that will address some of the problems that we discussed in the earlier slide. So Apigee API Management Platform is a full lifecycle API management platform that has several layers, including the runtime layer, the mediation engine, the API analytics piece, and also the developer ecosystem. So if we look at the API analytics piece, Apigee today provides several out-of-the-box inbuilt reports that help all the different personas that we talked about. It provides you developer engagement metrics and API program metrics for the API for the API product manager or program manager persona. And it provides business metrics such as the revenue report, the customer churn, etc., for the line of business. And it provides you operational metrics like the availability, the performance, the ability to quickly diagnose issues, linking your alerts to the right playbook so that you can take the appropriate remedial actions. And also security reporting, which is about adherence to compliance policies, and also analyzing the runtime traffic, and at the same time looking at the activity of the users within your organization, whether they are accessing sensitive data or not. So across all the three personas, we do provide metrics and dashboards that address some of the needs. And what we will do now is I will hand it over to Adam, who will talk a little bit about Citrix, what is their API journey, and how is Citrix actually leveraging all the data and the concepts that we talked about, and some of the use cases or problems that they are trying to solve internally by leveraging this data. Over to you, Adam.
So thanks, Manoj. So I'll start off, I'll just kind of give you guys a little bit of background on Citrix. For anyone that's not familiar with us, we're all about unifying apps and data in secure workspaces. We deal a lot with virtualization of desktops. We have NetScalers that do load balancing. We have cloud platforms where you can run, your entire desktop system. Things like Zen Mobile that manage your mobile devices. Basically, we believe work anywhere on any device at any time. So that's a little bit about Citrix. Obviously, head to citrix.com if you're interested in more information about the kind of stuff that we do here at Citrix. So I'm going to kind of give you guys a bit of a background on the Citrix API journey. We've been working with Apigee just about 5 years now. It started with a simple POC that me and some other team members did. We were evaluating various API platforms, and now it's been 5 years. We have 40 production APIs right now. On the right-hand side, you could see like some of the highlights of the things we do. We have SSO APIs. We have ones that people use to open support cases, asset management, contacts, all these various things you see here. One cool one to point out is you'll see there's a Salesforce spot listed right there. One of the really cool things we've kind of done with Salesforce is Salesforce themselves have a lot of APIs as well as old legacy services. Some are, REST services, some are SOAP services that you can connect to as a Salesforce customer. However, depending on their service, it depends on the authentication. There's a bit of back and forth and things like that. So we actually wrote inside of Apigee custom code through Apigee's workflows to handle that authentication, and then we sat Apigee on top of that so the consumers really only have to worry about an API key we send them, and we handle the connections with Salesforce. So that was really cool that we're able to do all that in Apigee, don't have to update Salesforce, and consumers don't have to deal with that if behind the scenes our APIs are connecting. Then internal and external consumers. We have obviously external consumers, but a lot of our traffic comes from our own internal Citrix teams. We're all over the world in several different departments, and we expose APIs to each other. It's a great platform to do it. Finally, it's simple. Talk about some of those things, but it's a really easy platform to get started on for developers and the consumers. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but here's a lot of the reasons why Citrix chose Apigee. One of the biggest ones is easy user and consumer management. It's really easy to add new users, give people keys, take them away, and I don't have to do anything on my back end. It's really awesome. Multiple formats are supported. Citrix, we've been around for 30 years now, so we have some really new services, and then we have some legacy ones that aren't highly used, that are in SOAP and things like that. It's really easy to put a REST front end on top of it and push it out through Apigee. And then there's some other ones in here, tracking usage, which I'm going to show you guys in a bit, reporting, monitoring. It uses a workflow UI to do a lot of the configurations and setup, which is really cool and easy to use. And then caching. I'll actually show you guys something with caching after. If anyone is not familiar with the caching feature of Apigee, it's actually really cool because if you have an API call that is repeated often, if you turn caching on, the call doesn't even go to your back end. It just sends back the same response. If you have a call that gets, states for a country, that doesn't have to go to your back end every time. So you can cache that on the front end and, your back end doesn't get hit. If you're using platforms like Azure, Google Cloud to host your APIs, that could definitely help reduce costs. All right, so now let's talk about harnessing the power of API data at Citrix. So there's a couple different ways that we at Citrix, and especially myself, utilize a lot of the different pieces of data that are exposed from Apigee. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the API monitoring dashboard, which has been around for approximately, I would say, it's relatively new in the last year. Manoj, did you want to talk a bit about that platform real quick, the API monitoring?
Sure, Adam. So API monitoring is essentially a feature that will address the ops persona of an enterprise business. So what API monitoring essentially provides is in near real-time metrics that could help an operations person actually look at the availability of the APIs, business-critical APIs. It will give you an option to group some of the most important APIs as a collection, and you can very closely monitor the availability and the performance metrics of those collections. And at the same time, it has a very, very comprehensive alerting capability and very flexible alerting capability. I must say you can have alerts triggered with various dimensions and various performance metrics incorporated, and you can receive it. There is options for webhooks. You can get it on a pager duty, email, Slack, and multiple channels. And when you get an alert through API monitoring, your diagnosis process becomes very, very simple. When you click on a button, and Adam will actually walk you through these steps in the demo, but when you actually click on the button, you will quickly be able to identify the root cause of the issue within 1 or 2 clicks without even going to any other logging tools like Splunk. This is very, very important for a lot of customers of ours because it significantly reduces their mean time to diagnosis and also the mean time to resolution. One, primarily because the monitoring platform being totally integrated with Apigee, it gets a complete view of the API value chain that we discussed. So across all these, you will be able to very quickly, very precisely pinpoint where the issue has happened. Is it because my backend is failing? Is it because the deployment is not done properly? Or is it because of the front-end application that this proxy is actually failing? So we will go through a live demo of it, but essentially you don't have to, toggle between multiple screens. You don't have to do the trace sessions. You don't have to look into the logs and other screens to actually diagnose the root cause of the problem.
Cool, thanks. So what you guys see here, I highlighted a lot of the stuff that Manoj just mentioned about like ad hoc monitoring of proxies, traffic, errors, latency, excuse me, timelines for environments, regions, custom alerts. So, and I'll show you guys that in a few minutes. At the bottom here, you see there's a little screenshot I have of like, it shows you kind of like what's hot, what's broken. And, in a few minutes, I'll actually show you what that looks like live. The next item we use here a lot is something I call real-time dashboard. So built into Apigee, like this is built in, all these dashboards and little monitors I'm going to show you guys later to show you current traffic, latency, errors, payload. It's very similar to the API monitoring dashboard that kind of focuses in on, okay, here's what the problem is now. The real-time dashboards kind of give you some more in-depth stuff where you can target specific things such as like target performance. So target performance is how your back-end code is performing, where overall performance might look at including going through the Apigee layer and your back-end cache, any custom code. So this really allows you to dive deep into things in real time again, and I'll show you guys that and all the different things that come. There's a lot there to it. And I'll even show you an example of like something we did a few weeks ago where this came in really handy to show us a problem we were seeing. Finally, custom reporting. So you can use custom reporting to do a lot of different things. So some of the things like track customer usage, traffic, drill down into specifics, performance over long periods of time. On the right-hand side, some of these items I listed, like quarter-over-quarter comparisons, target retirement, targeting new quarterly goals and new features. I'll kind of explain those a bit more. Okay, so here's all these cool numbers, and I'm sure a lot of people at work at their various companies all the time, everyone's like, I want to see reports on this, I want to see reports on that. Like, show me these numbers. One thing we try to stress here at Citrix is like, okay, we have these numbers and these fancy reports, like, let's have action items, make them actionable. Like, it's great to show numbers, but then there should be action items associated with them, or else, you're just showing pretty charts. So I'll show you some of the stuff we've done, and I'll show you some real actual live reports. So then here's my guy lighting stuff on fire. Let's do some demos. Going to share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. All right. If at any point something goes out, or while I'm talking, if the screen shares a little behind, let me know, and I'll try to slow it down and coordinate it. All right. So what you guys are seeing right now is this is our Apigee. This is our dev instance, which we use for our non-production API. So I'm going to show you around there. So the first thing we're going to talk about is that API monitoring item. So while that's loading, basically this is the dashboard I was talking about, where immediately, anytime, so right now you'll see this, for us, this is looking at our pre-prod environment. Within our Apigee environment instance, you can set up different environments. So pre-prod is one of our testing environments. So if we get reports or somebody wants to check on the health of things as preventative measures, because we do have logging and things like that, like Splunk, like Manoj talked about, but this kind of gives us, okay, what issues are we seeing right now? So like up here in the top left, you can see, all right, how much traffic we're getting a second. Again, there's not necessarily a ton going on right now. It's testing, so that's going to vary. But then we can see, oh, wow, like the account service, for example, the account API in the US East, like that's bad, right? There's 91% error rate or something along those lines. So, someone would investigate these. Obviously, a lot of these numbers are high because this is a test environment, so people are testing things all the time. But I purposely chose this environment because it's real easy to see, like, if there's things broken, you can see this. And then here's some latency about, like, all right, wow, there's, that's taking 55 milliseconds. Somebody might want to look into that. So these are all good tools to, if you want to see all of them, I can click View All here, and it would show, all right, what's the error rate for all these different APIs. And what's cool is it kind of gives you this hotspot item you can click on if something's like bad or something like that. It shows me, bam, it'll show me current trends for that. Great, there haven't been any errors over the last hour. And you could play around with these. We could change the environments you could see here. So this kind of gives you like a real-time thing that you can fiddle with. There's this timeline feature, which is very similar. So this is if you want to go look at hotspots. All right, so this tells me some hotspots here of the errors. This is currently for all the proxies, the different regions. But if you want, you can target specific regions. So for us, we have U.S. West Coast and U.S. East Coast right now for Apigee. Those are where our two regions are set up. So you can filter by that. You can filter by proxies. You can see we have a lot of different proxies here. So you could filter down on like one was the account service we saw. So you can see, wow, look, cool. There were 15,000 errors. So clearly something is wrong with that service in the test environment. This is a great way to drill down. So if you do investigate, it's going to bring up another screen, which is really cool. So what this tells me is, here's all the different errors that these proxies are receiving. So if I go to like the account, for example, this is something where immediately, okay, so this right here is getting a message of adapter flow error inside of the proxy. So maybe something's configured wrong, but it's telling us exactly what's going on. We can filter this by the different fault codes and policies, etc. So this is, again, another tool. Won't go into too much more detail here, but it kind of shows a little bit of the different items. There's a lot more I kind of want to show you. So one of my favorite things is this alert. So there's not a ton of alerts turned on in this specific environment because, again, it's a test environment. It would trigger more often than you would probably want to see. But what's really cool is to create a custom alert, all you have to do is hit that button, you choose your environment, then you could choose your, what you want to monitor. We could say latency, right? And if I could say, okay, if the latency is greater than, we could say, like 1,500 milliseconds for 5 minutes, then we would want it to send an alert. So, and you can add a whole lot more dimensions, a whole lot more condition data, but just do that real quick for you to show you. And then I could just put in here my email address and then say, how often do I want to be bothered, basically. So it would be 15 minutes. You can do 30 minutes, an hour, etc. And then I would, of course, I'd forgot, then you can set it up for a specific proxy. Forgot to do that. I don't care what region, do it for all regions. Now I hit save. And of course we have to give it a name. Count latency alert. And you can set up, there's so many dimensions and factors, like there's no time to go through all of them. But just to show you a quick example, when one of those gets triggered, like here's one I got earlier today. I purposely set some low thresholds and broke stuff so you guys could see that, okay, cool. Like this is the email it sent me at 12:15 today. Hey, here's the org, here's the violation. You click view details. If I actually click this link, it will take me right into this API monitoring dashboard and show me exactly what rules I broke, show me the latency over this time period, et cetera. It's all under this investigate tab. And again, you can configure those so many ways, and you can get alerts through email, and there's other methods as Manoj told you about. So that's kind of a super quick overview of API monitoring. There's definitely more to drill down into there, but we'd be here for hours. I will show you something I mentioned earlier. I called out with these like live dashboards, as I call real time. So another one that we use is, especially this one we actually use in dev and production, is post deployment, because as soon as we deploy new versions of things, we can monitor things for like errors, right? So let's say we just deployed this account proxy. This shows me, here's all the errors over the last day. Again, something is wrong, obviously, because look at all these errors. You can see the response times here. So this is telling me over the last day, the average response time has been 135 milliseconds. And then, down here is the traffic per hour. So I will show you a real time or a real item that we ran into. So I'm going to change to a different service, something called the STS. This is one of our single sign-on APIs that we use. And I'm going to show you a specific time frame. So we were working on a new feature release, and we deployed a new version of this API into our test environment. So as soon as that happened, we got a few alerts, and actually people reached out to us too. Hey, we're seeing some latency. And this is perfect. You can see, so I'm like, all right, let me see what's going on. And I went in and I looked at this, and you could tell exactly when we deployed this, right? Because the average latency here was like 200 milliseconds. And then all of a sudden, about 10 o'clock Eastern time, boom, there's this big spike. And now we're looking at, 2,000, 3,000 milliseconds with some spikes over 5,000. So we were immediately able to see, okay, that deployment today definitely caused an issue. Again, this is a test environment, but it's good because, we run unit integration tests and some performance things like that. But okay, now in the actual environment, there's an issue we need to look at. Like, this was really easy to see. And if I extend that out over like a 10-day period, oops, let me go back here. We fixed this problem, and there was a couple iterations, and we found out the root cause of it. But you could definitely see once this loads, like what our items were. This may take a little bit of time. So you can see here, okay, this was when we deployed the new one. We reverted back, we tried again, and et cetera. And then you'll see after a few days, it's going to flatten out. But that's the kind of stuff you can see immediately, like, oh, wow, there's a new deployment. Look at the spike in response time, or look at the spike in errors, or something along those lines. Finally, I'll just show you or tell you about there's this target performance one. I won't go too much into depth, depth as we're trying to show you a lot here. But anyway, basically what you can do here is this is all your backends that are hit, and you could filter for this based on IP addresses and things like that to determine if you have latency for specific backend IP addresses, for example. How much traffic is going to different targets, response times based on these targets, again, errors, payload size, etc. So this is if you want to specifically target what your backend is receiving. So the last one I'm going to show you is custom reports. So custom reports are basically outside of all those traffic. The other one that I will mention, sorry, is error code analysis. I didn't have time to show you guys that, but if you click on that one, it's really cool. It kind of shows you by proxy all the errors, the codes, and things like that, kind of similar to the hotspots we looked at in the monitoring dashboard. But anyway, here's some reports that we have, and I'm actually going to, now we have to be really careful because I'm going to switch to prod for a second because there's better data and you can see some cool stuff. So one thing I will show you or tell you about is they group these things into what they call report jobs. So for example, if I want to, and I'm going to kick one off just to show you, if I want to run something that's over like a 2-month period, 3-month period or whatever, it's not going to sit there and wait. They actually have this new feature that they launched where it basically tells me, boom, we're in the reports, we'll let you know when it's done. So that's pretty cool. So while that's running, I will show you 2 reports that I ran earlier just to kind of show you how we use some of these reports. All right, so we have this one here, which is traffic for I'm going to show 2 things here. Bear with me. All right, so I'll wait for the other one to load up. But so what this is this is our traffic for Q2. Let me try. I want to get these side by side. Hopefully this will work. All right, so doing the best I can get it. All right, so what we have here is Q1, right? And we have account data service had 22 million calls. That was all of Q1. Well, if we come over here to Q2, the account service had 140 million. That is a massive spike. And this is the type of great stuff that we get from a report because it's like, okay, and look, if you see here, I can drill down into different apps that are using these and see that this CWC Control Center V2 went from 20 million to 122 million. And I didn't have to do anything on the back end. I came right through Apigee, and it's like, okay, so I need to figure out what's going on. Why do these guys have 100 million more calls? Are they expecting this to be continued? And these types of things, this will drive like what we do for the quarter. All right, if this is going to be the consistent level of traffic, do we need to increase our servers on the back end, scale up in the cloud, and things like that? Something else that we noticed real quick, I know I'm running short on time. We noticed some other groups had big increases, and I reached out to some of them, and so what's happening is they're like, oh yeah, we have other teams within our group that want to use it, and so we shared our API key. Well, that's a problem. So you really should not share your API key. So an initiative we're working on is working with those groups, tell us your other team, and we're breaking down their API keys into more specific API keys so we can more accurately track the usage of those specific teams. So like that's been really key for us, monitoring usage, worrying about do we have the scale to support increased usage quarter over quarter and things like that. Tracking who's using keys, should they be using those keys, and things along those lines. Like this one was a big one from Q1 to Q2 because there's cost impacts there as well. That's my time for showing the demos. Again, there's like a ton more to show, but I could kick off 7 reports, and if they're taking too much time or something like that, I can come back and they'll let me know. And this one it won't show because it's big, so I could export this, for example, and view it in Excel and other platforms. I actually think Manoj is going to talk about that a bit. So
Cool. Thank you so much, Adam.
You guys enjoyed those demos. Back over to you, Manoj.
Cool. Thank you so much, Adam. This was very insightful. Before we go into questions, I just want to very quickly cover the security reporting feature. And before I talk about this, I just want to quickly remind the audience, if you have any questions, please don't wait until the end of the webcast. Please do post them as soon as you have, and we will be able to answer it in just about 5 minutes from now. Last week, we announced a new feature called API Security Reporting. And what this feature essentially addresses is for the security operations people, you can basically do 3 different activities on this feature. One is you can very quickly review which API proxies have been configured with which policies across the entire organization. And this is across environments, this is across regions and stuff like that. So if you as a SecOps person would like to ensure that all of your proxies have been configured, for example, let's say spike arrest policy, this is the place where you can actually quickly verify and cross-check. And given the fact that enterprises are now exposing business critical and sensitive information to APIs, it is equally important for the operations teams to also ensure that the right people have the right access levels to the sensitive data. So data protection is another capability within this feature where you can see who within your organization is accessing the sensitive data. Has there been any anomaly in terms of their access patterns? And if yes, then you can quickly contact that person and understand why he or she is actually trying to access secure data. You can also view who within your organization is exporting data out of the platform through management APIs. By the way, I forgot to mention that all the capabilities that you see in Apigee, including the analytics, the custom reporting, including the monitoring capabilities, can all be done outside of Apigee 2 through the management APIs. And if you would like to be part of this beta program, and if you're already an enterprise cloud customer of Apigee, there is a lot of documentation out there. The feature is being currently rolled out, and if you're already a customer, you will see this feature on your console probably by mid of next week. And please use the documentation to walk through this feature. So all the capabilities that we have seen until now is what is out of box available in Apigee Edge. If this is all the amazing stuff you can do within Apigee Edge, think of all the different things that you can do if you could have the capability to take this data out of Apigee and combine it with your proprietary enterprise data and derive some business and operational insights. So Apigee also provides the data export capability where you can take the data on a periodic basis, every byte of data into your GCP console, and you can use it with your CRM data or ERP data or any other proprietary information to derive some benefits. One of our customer, Trustpilot, is actually trying to currently take the data out of the system, and they're trying to combine it with their CRM data to see what categories of users are actually using what API products, for them to actually see if there is an opportunity to monetize these, and if there is an opportunity, what are the different rate plans and revenue models that they can build out of it. So we kind of already worked on this. If you're already an Apigee Edge Enterprise customer, so please go to the documentation to get started and understand how you can harness the power of API data. And if you are not, please go ahead and sign up for a free trial of Apigee Edge. With that, let's take a few questions. So Adam, this question is for you. The question is, do you export any of the data outside of the platform? And if yes, how are you using it?
We do export some of the data, so there's a couple ways. A lot of these reports can be exported out of Apigee into things like Excel. And then we actually also, one thing that wasn't really talked about much is a lot of what you can do in Apigee, you can, like through the UI, you can use, access through APIs. So we actually pull some of the Apigee data through APIs into our metrics reporting to find out, like, we have like summaries we show about, how our apps are being used, and we pull traffic data, usage data into some of our quarterly stats monitoring and presentations we send to other people. And then we also pull it into some of our BI systems so we can gauge how much items are being used. So one thing we've used some of this traffic reporting for is retiring old services or APIs. So we actually are moving to a V2 of one of our APIs, and it makes it really easy to track who are people still using it, who they are, and contacting them to encourage them to migrate.
Okay, perfect. So we have one more question on where these capabilities are available. Is it also available on OPGK and hybrid? So I think this is a great question, and I think I should take some time to clarify this. All the capabilities, like the custom reporting, the monitoring, security reporting that you see on Apigee platform is available to our enterprise cloud customers only. And this will also be very soon slowly roll out into the hybrid model that we are going GA towards the end of this year. But other than that, OPGK, these capabilities are not available. You can use your own proprietary BI tools to extract this data and actually build some insights into it. All right, I think we are almost towards the end of the time. This is all the questions that we can take today. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ping us online, and we will be more than happy to answer them. That's all for today. Have a nice rest of the day.
Cool. Thanks, Manoj. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Adam.